Welcome to Vince by Submission. I'm your host, Vince, and I'm here to talk about the event that happened last night, UFC 329. And I remember coming into this event, I was pretty excited for it. Whenever I look at all the scheduled bouts that they had listed, it looked like we're going to see a lot of very exciting fights. And sure enough, this event delivered. From the opening prelim fight all the way up to the co-main event, it was nothing but a bunch of exciting fights. We had some fast finishes, we had some later finishes. We had fights that went the distance that were still really entertaining from the opening bell to the final bell. Everything except the main event was really exciting, unfortunately. That was the one negative behind this event, was the main event and didn't deliver the way we wanted it to be. The return of Conor McGregor didn't really pan out the way we expected, but sometimes that's just the fight game. But here we're going to talk about every single one of those fights, starting with the main event and working our way down. I'm going to be talking about all the things that stuck out, all of the main card fights at least. I'm going to talk about who won and what's next for the winners, what's next for the losers, how the fights played out, and all that fun stuff. I'm even going to be going over some of the stuff that happened on the prelims because it was a pretty good set of fights on the prelims as well. It's a very fun event. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, if you have Paramount Plus, you should go back and watch these fights because they were absolutely outstanding. All right. So we're going to go ahead and start talking about this event, starting with the main event, Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway. So this fight, in the opening sequence of the fight, Conor McGregor decided to do some kind of flying jump kick and landed funny and damaged something in his knee. Now, there's been a lot of speculation out there. I've seen some people say they think it was his LCL, some say it was his ACL, some think it was his meniscus, but there's been no official like word from Conor McGregor or any kind of medical staff or anything like that that said what the injury specifically was. But you could tell from early on the way he was limping after that wild jump kick that he did that he injured something and he was not able to stand. And eventually, like, Max Holloway didn't even have to do a whole lot. He just kind of danced around him. He threw a couple of strikes. As you can see, he landed 14, but it was nothing too, insane or anything like that. Just a couple of pitter patter hits here and there. And you could see that he was kind of concerned for Conor McGregor, like, should we keep fighting? You can't even stand up. And then eventually Conor McGregor realized that he really doesn't need to be in this fight. He kind of shook his head and kind of waved it off like, yeah, I'm done. And you could tell he's just very defeated mentally over this. He's very bummed about it. Sometimes it's the fight game. It's really hard on the body, and sometimes these things happen. And the crazy thing about this is the knee he injured was the opposite from the leg that he broke. So it wasn't like related to the previous injury. From what I could tell, he broke his left leg around the shin area and then blew his right knee. So I got to ask myself, and I have to ask all of you, do we really think that it's wise for Conor McGregor to keep on fighting? I've seen some people say, well, these kind of injuries happen. He could go get surgery, recover, come back in like a year, but he's already coming off of a 5-year layoff from a really bad break on one leg. He comes back and immediately blows his knee in the other leg. Is his body just giving out from all the wars he's been in? I honestly think it's time to hang it up. And I'm not saying this as a Conor McGregor hater. I'm honestly not a fan of the guy, but I'm not saying that because of that. I'm just being realistic here. Just logically speaking, whenever you have a fight with a really, really bad injury, you take 5 years off, come back, and in the opening sequence, get another really bad injury, and they're both involving your legs. If you don't have legs, you just can't fight. I know that we have some weird anomalies on some, lower league MMA promotions that have people that fight with no legs, but in the UFC, this is the upper echelon. You really need to have your wheels working for you to, get moving whenever you're in the fight game. And it looks like Conor McGregor's legs are gone. I really think it's time for him to hang it up. Now, some people are saying, well, Max Holloway just won at 170, so what's next for him? And I've seen people talking about maybe having him fight Carlos Prates. I don't think that's a good move. I don't think it's a good move to be facing someone as dangerous as Prates. Honestly, I don't think it's a good move for Max Holloway to stay at 170, period. The only reason why he won this match, I mean, granted, I think he was going to win this match anyway because Conor McGregor is coming off a huge layoff. I talked about that on my predictions video earlier this week. But regardless of all that, he's not competing against one of the actual competitors at welterweight. So I think that competing, like staying at 170, competing at 170 is going to be a very bad move. Like I said, I saw some people talking about wanting to see him versus Prates, and I think it's just a bad move. I think facing any good contender at 170 is a bad move. I think staying at 170 period is a bad move. He could probably beat a few people in the lower levels of the rankings, but this is not the weight class for him. The man can still, if you really wanted to, make 145 pretty easily. It's not like some people that moved up in weight because they were really struggling to make the weight. He wasn't having that kind of issue. He was able to float between 145 and 155 pretty easily. And I think those weight classes work really well for him. He just kind of bloated up a bit just to make 170. It didn't really look like the weight class he belonged in. So again, I think he would have gotten this win regardless of the injury, but this is not the weight class for him. So in my opinion, I don't know if you guys agree with it or not, but I think he needs to go back to 155. I think there's a lot of matchups he could have. I think there's some good rematches that he could have. There's people he has not faced yet at 155. I think there's a lot of good fights for him at 155. I don't think he belongs at 170. So that's just my take on it. So Conor McGregor needs to retire. He's already done enough. You know, his legacy set in stone. He is the highest paid athlete in MMA history. He doesn't need money. He doesn't need any more legacy. He needs to just call it a day. Max Holloway needs to go back to 155. That's my opinion on these two. And now moving on to the co-main event. This one was very short as well. Actually, it was shorter than the last match, but it felt longer because we at least got to see more happen. Because with the Max Holloway fight with Conor McGregor's kind of injured and limping around. It's Max kind of dancing around him like, you know, should we actually engage? Should we do anything? This one actually had action for the full 52 seconds that the fight actually happened. This fight was just mind-blowing on how good Paddy Pimblett's ground game is. Like I said before, I think that Paddy Pimblett does have an advantage on the ground, especially when it comes to the grappling aspect, when it comes to Benoit Saint-Denis' lack of grappling defense compared to Paddy Pimblett's. I said that if Paddy Pimblett gets Benoit in a bad position, Benoit's going to have a hard time getting out of it, and that's exactly what happened from the opening exchange of the fight. Benoit Saint-Denis, as I said before, he's very aggressive even with his grappling. He likes to just charge head first and bulldoze you like a rhino. And that's what he did. He charged at Paddy Pimblett, kind of blitzed him with I can't remember if it was a single leg or double leg off the top of my head, but he's going for a takedown. I think it was a double leg. And he's going head first. He had his head down. And I know from experience, because I've been injured doing that, you shouldn't be diving, you know, head first, eyes towards the mat, forehead going towards your opponent, because you're going to get wrapped up in something. Paddy Pimblett wrapped up a guillotine. He goes down with them. He's trying to sink it in. They start scrambling a little bit, and Paddy sinks the other arm all the way through to turn his guillotine into a darce. So a darce is even tighter. A darce is kind of like a super guillotine in a sense. And Benoit tried to roll out of it, and Paddy just rolled with him and just sunk it in even tighter. And he got his legs up over him, where he's kind of pushing out those legs a little bit, similar to a Peruvian necktie, but it was more of a modified darce choke. And Benoit didn't tap. The ref did a good job here. He checked on his arm, and he wiggled his arm, and it was limp, and so he called it. Paddy let him go and stands up. Benoit is out. So less than a minute into the fight, Benoit is unconscious. He gets choked out by Paddy Pimblett. This was a fantastic performance by Paddy Pimblett. He actually was one of the two winners of the performance of the night off of this finish. What is next for these two? Well, some people are going to look at this performance by Benoit Saint-Denis, saw how fast he lost to, a top contender. I can't remember exactly where Paddy Pimblett was ranked. We could actually look that up real quick. Lightweight rankings. He's ranked at 9. That seems really low. I know they have the media rankings and the AI, the meta rankings, which is kind of weird how they have that split up. Where's Paddy? Is Paddy even... Wait, that's featherweight. Sorry. Yeah, so he's 6 here. He is 9 here. I don't really understand the rankings on why they have him ranked that low. But Benoit losing to someone that's ranked there, it's probably going to hurt his stock a little bit. I know he's been gunning really hard to work his way up to a title shot, and losing to Paddy Pimblett where Paddy's ranked, I think that they're going to probably look at rebooking Benoit against somebody that's lower in the rankings. So it's really going to slow him down. I'm not really sure who they should put him against next. I know he has lost Moicano. Maybe you could set up this rematch. They might feed him Quillen Salkilled, who's kind of on a tear and working his way up. By the way, these rankings are not updated, obviously, because Benoit would be much lower. But yeah, I think the next thing for Benoit Saint-Denis is going to be Maybe rematch from Moicano, maybe face Quillen Salkill just working his way up, something like that. Now, what's next for Paddy Pimblett? Well, the only person he's lost to is the current champion. I know a lot of people want to see him fight Ilia Topuria, and I think that would be a really good fight. Ilia Topuria, he did get one title defense at lightweight, so it's possible they might want to give him an immediate title shot whenever he's healed and ready after his injuries from his fight. Or maybe they want him to face someone else first. If they do want him to face someone else, I think Paddy would be the perfect opponent for him. If not him, I mean, we could do Paddy versus Charles Oliveira. They want to do the BMF route. I don't know, maybe Arman Sarukian, if he's ready to fight anytime soon. I heard something about maybe he's suspended for gambling or something like that. I'm not 100% sure on that, but there's a lot of good fights here for Paddy. I think Arman Sarukian, Charles Oliveira, Max Holloway. There's a lot of good fights here that I think he could have. Obviously, he should be facing someone above him. I think he's going to leapfrog up above Quillen Salkill, so maybe not that fight. Gamrot could be another good one. There's a lot of good fights here for him at 155. So I think of all of those options, I would like to see Paddy Pimblett versus Ilia Topuria. Those two already have a lot of bad blood with each other. With how bad Ilia lost, I think they're not going to immediately give him another rematch. I could be wrong, but he might not get an immediate rematch against Justin. So I think Paddy versus Ilia, you put those two against each other who are both coming off of losses from Justin Gaethje. And I think it would be a logical step for who gets to face Justin next, if Justin even sticks around, because there's still talk of maybe he's going to retire right off into the sunset as champion. Who knows? We shall see. But that's my opinion on this one. Benoit Saint-Denis, Paddy Pimblett. Saint-Denis is going to fight someone down. Paddy Pimblett's going to fight someone ranked up higher. And that's basically that for these two. Moving on to this fight. This one was pretty fun. I expected it to be a little more exciting than it was. Mario Batista and Corey Sandhagen. Batista was able to implement a lot more of his grappling than I would have liked to see, because his grappling is the type that really focuses on controlling you and not really finishing you as much as a lot of other grapplers. But it was still all right. It was still fun to see. Side note, the main event and the co-main, I got my predictions right on. This is one that I got wrong. I said that these two are pretty close in skill level, but I think Corey Sandhagen might be just a smidgen better. So I think he's going to, edge out a win. And I was wrong. It ended up being Mario Batista taking this one. And if I remember correctly, it was 29-28 on the judges' scorecards. And I actually thought it should have been 30-27. I think one round was pretty close, but I still gave it to Batista, and then 2 rounds were just not close. I think that Batista should have won all 3 of these rounds. It was a decent fight. There was a good mix of striking and grappling, and whenever it came to the grappling, it was clear that Mario Batista's grappling was a lot better than I thought it was. I knew it was good. I really knew it was good. Maybe it was bad optics because of how he got out-grappled by Umar Nurmagomedov, who is a top-tier grappler. But I thought Sandhagen and Batista's grappling would have been at least somewhat close, and it really wasn't. In the striking department, it was pretty close. As you can see, it wasn't a drastic difference here on the strikes. Well, the 3rd round is because Batista had him down in a bad position, was able to land a lot of strikes from clinching and grappling. But whenever they're standing and striking, it's pretty close. But Batista really won here because he had really great grappling, was able to control Sandhagen. He almost got a finish at the end of, can't remember if it was round 1 or 2, where he ended up getting him in like a leg lock. It almost looked like it was going to be a banana split. Then it turned into a knee bar. Couldn't quite finish it. Ends up going to decision. Mario Batista gets the win. So what is next for these two? All right, so these are bantamweight. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the bantamweight rankings real quick. I don't feel like switching back and forth between these two. I'm just going to stick on the media rankings. I think the media rankings are a little bit closer anyway to how I would have them ranked. So bantamweight rankings, Mario Batista is number 5. Of course, Sandhagen was number 4. So this is really good. These two fighting right by each other. So whenever the rankings update, these two are probably just going to flip. So what's next for these two? Well, Corey Sandhagen coming off of a loss. I could see him fighting someone else that is on the rise that he hasn't faced yet. I think anyone in this 6 through 10 area that he hasn't fought yet. And I don't have in front of me who all he has and has not fought. So forgive me on not being able to pull a name out immediately. But I think any of these fights would be pretty good for Corey Sandhagen. Any of these guys who have some momentum that are working their way up. Now, what's next for Mario Batista? Well, he's already lost to Umar, and apparently he trains with Sean O'Malley, so he doesn't really want to fight Sean O'Malley. Really, what is next for him? I don't know if they're going to have Merab versus Petr Yan soon. I don't know if they're setting up that rematch, but I think really one of these three, Petr Yan, Merab, Umar, maybe it's a little premature to say he's worthy of a title shot just yet, but the fact that he just beat number 4, he's not going to face number 3. He already lost to Umar. Maybe a rematch with Umar. I don't know if they're going to do Merab versus Petr Yan. If not, maybe you could set up a fight with Merab because he has not faced Merab, to my knowledge. So I think that would be a pretty good one. Mario Batista versus Merab. Unfortunately, I think this is as high as Batista's going to get. As good as he is, I think he probably could give Sean O'Malley some trouble and beat him. But again, they're not going to fight because they are training partners. I think these three, I don't know if he beats those three. Umar, Merab, or Petr Yan. He might. I could be wrong. But I think that's really what's next for him as one of those guys because there's really no one else unless they feel like having him fight down again. Well, I say again, he just fought up, but it wouldn't make sense for him to fight down after that performance. So, yeah, I think that's really what's next for him there. Corey Sandhagen, like I said, one of these guys, 6 through 10. Free Basharat would be a pretty good one. He just came off a really good win. We'll be talking about that one in a minute. That's really it for this fight. This fight right here, this is one of the other 2 fights that I got wrong on my main card predictions, Brandon Royval versus Lonnie Kavanaugh. Now, I did say I was hoping I was wrong on this one because I am a huge Brandon Royval fan, and he very quickly reminded me why I was a fan of this guy in the first place. This fight was absolutely fantastic. This fight did get fight of the night, deservedly so. These two brought it to each other. Now, I know the total strike here, the differential looks a lot bigger, but I think that's mostly because of there were some parts where he was working some stuff in the clinch and had him in some bad spots. When they were standing and trading with each other on the feet, it was actually a lot closer than what these numbers would show you. On the feet, when these two were striking, not in any kind of grappling exchange, it was very competitive. There were times where Kavanaugh had Brandon Royval hurt in the second round, even though the strikes are in Brandon Royval's favor. Kavanaugh actually hurt Royval more, had dropped him, looked like he had Royval in a lot of trouble. He actually bloodied Royval in round 1, even though he landed fewer strikes. Kavanaugh lost here, but I don't think this loss is really going to hurt his stock so much because he actually performed really well in this fight. He did a lot of damage. He really took it to Royval. He was very gritty. He showed that he was fast. He's got good striking. The one problem he had was he was a bit lacking in the grappling department, which ultimately led to Brandon Royval getting him down and finishing him off by submission pretty late in the third round. Yeah, 3 minutes, 40 seconds into the third round. So it was pretty late on. It was a finish. I think if it would have gone to decision, Royval would have probably taken it 2-1, even though if you just look off the strikes and the takedowns, it looks like everything was in favor of Royval for all 3 rounds. But if you don't really look at just the stats and look at how things played out on the damage and the control and stuff like that, I think Kavanaugh probably could have taken 1 round. But regardless of all that, Royval would have still won regardless and ended up being a submission anyway. It was a really, really fun fight. He ended up getting him in a pretty tight rear naked choke, and it was like under the chin. It was he was turning it into a bit of a neck crank. And when Kavanaugh's chin come up, he ended up seeing it the rest of the way, tighten it up. It was picture perfect. Royval is fantastic with his jiu-jitsu. He's a high-level black belt, so you really don't want to play games with him on the ground. And that was the big split here on their skill set, was the grappling. I think in the stand-up, Lonnie Kavanaugh is very, very dangerous. So even though he lost, I don't think this is going to hurt his stock a whole lot. He's just going to use this loss to see what he needs to tighten up in his game. And I think he's going to come back really strong and still be a problem for people in this division. Now, what's next for Brandon Royval? Well, he's on a bit of a losing streak until this fight where he was able to break the losing streak. I mean, it wasn't a huge one. It was like maybe 2 or 3 fights. But the fact that he is coming off of a few losses, I don't think that they're going to be putting him up into the stiffest competition just yet. I know he lost to Cop. I know he's previously lost to Pantoja, but not very recently. But he also lost to Van last year. So maybe set him up with Tatsuro Taira. Maybe a rematch with Cop. I'm not really sure. I'm pretty sure they're going to be setting up Pantoja versus Van rematch. And I think Cop is going to be facing Van. So that pretty much leaves Tatsuro Taira. I think that would be the next best fight for Brandon Royval is to go against Taira. If he wins that fight, then he could get a rematch against one of these three guys up here. Now, as far as Kavanaugh goes, well, he just lost to someone above him, and he still made it pretty competitive. So maybe they give him one of these other guys that are on the rise. Almabayev, someone else called out Almabayev on this card. Actually, I think it was Brandon Royval that did. Royval called out Asu Almabayev after he won his fight. Now that I remember that. So actually, the next fight for Royval, even though it's going down, it actually might be Almabayev. But for Kavanaugh, maybe Almabayev or one of these other guys coming up. There's a lot of guys that have a lot of momentum here. He's already beat Moreno. So any of these guys here, Horiguchi, Albazi, a lot of good fights here that you could set up for Kavanaugh. I don't think he's out of the runnings just yet. It was, like I said, it was still a good performance, even though he lost. I don't think it's going to hurt him too much. I'm glad to see Royval get the win. I'm glad to see him get back a little momentum. And let's see if he can go ahead and get back into being competitive in the top portion of the flyweight division. Now, moving on to the next fight. The opening fight. I got my predictions right on this one. So my total for this event, because I only did predictions for the main 5 fights on the main card, I ended up going 3-2. I got this one right. I didn't expect it to go the way that it did, though. I thought it was going to be a little bit more competitive, maybe go into the second round. I think I even said that I think Bobby Green is going to win by TKO in the second round. He ended up getting a buzzer beater TKO the very end of the first round. Terrence McKinney was actually giving King Green a whole lot of problems. Hey, look at that. I called him King Green instead of Bobby Green. He was giving Bobby a good bit of trouble. He actually had him hurt. He was taking it to him. And then King Green returned with the flurry towards the very end of the round. He would have lost that round if not for that final sequence. King Green ended up sticking Terrence McKinney with a nasty combination, ends up dropping him with some body shots. Then he jumps on top of him and just starts pummeling him in the side of the head. And McKinney just covers up, but he's not really doing anything, just taking a lot of damage. The ref calls it with 1 second left. Buzzer beater win for Bobby Green. And Bobby Green is now on a 4-fight win streak. So I'm really happy to see it. Now, what is next for him? He is actually not ranked unless something changed. Last I looked, he was ranked, I think, last year and kind of fell out of the rankings because he had lost a good bit. I think with the winning streak that he's been on, I think maybe it's time to see if he's ready to fight people in the rankings again. So instead of keeping him fighting, unranked people over and over and over again, I think it would be good for him to fight one of these people in the bottom of the rankings. So take these guys in the bottom of the top 15, 11 through 15. Look at who he's not faced yet. I actually can't remember. He's fought so many fights. I can't remember who all he's faced and hasn't faced yet. I've seen some people calling for a fight between him and Rafael Fiziev. I think that would be a really fun fight. I'd really like to see that one. So I think that would be what's next for him. What's next for Terrence McKinney? Well, he's unranked. He just lost someone who's unranked, so he's going to have to stick with whatever other unranked people that are trying to work the way up are ready to fight. That's basically it for him. I think Bobby Green needs to fight someone ranked now. He's won too many matches in a row to keep fighting unranked people. Let's put him against Fiziev. That's what I would like to see. Now, that's it for the main card. There's a few fights I do want to talk about on the prelims, and I'm going to keep it brief. We're going to talk about this one right here, Nikita Krylov versus Robert Whittaker. This is a really fun fight. I do think Robert Whittaker should stay at middleweight. Moving up, he seemed a little sluggish at times, and he was taking a good bit of damage, but it was still somewhat competitive. And he's going against Krylov, who, let's see if he was ranked. I can't remember. I'm going to check real quick. So, yeah, he just fought someone who is unranked at light heavyweight. And it was pretty competitive. It's pretty close. If you look at the stats here, yeah, the strikes are really close. In fact, Krylov outstruck him a good bit. He also got some takedowns. At times, I thought Krylov was going to win this fight. But in the third round, Robert Whittaker lands a nice combination. He was doing a lot of headhunting, and he ended up landing some pretty nasty shots on the jaw of Krylov. And he kind of stumbles back for a minute, starts like working his jaw, like he got hit in the jaw, and he stumbled back as like started wiggling his jaw and then waved his hands like he's done. And I thought maybe his jaw got broke or something like that. I'm not quite sure what the injury was. Dana White said that medical staff checked him out and his jaw's not broken. I don't know if maybe it just hurt really bad and felt like it maybe broke or maybe dislocated or almost dislocated or something like that. I'm not sure, but you can see he was writhing in pain from his jaw and he was working his jaw and he just waved off the fight like he didn't want anymore. So Robert Whitaker did get a really good finish here and it was a really good performance. And I'm happy to see him get the win. But with how much he struggled to get that, and he was probably on his way to losing that fight until he got that TKO. I think if he's struggling that much against someone who's unranked, he doesn't really belong at light heavyweight. I think he needs to go back to middleweight. Regardless, though, it was a good win. So I was happy to see it, but he needs to go back to middleweight. Gable Stevenson was another one that a lot of people were really excited for. You know, undefeated 3-0, first round TKOs every single time going against Elisha Ellison. And he's a massive favorite. When I did this video yesterday, he was a minus 1600. Right here showing minus 2000. The numbers shift a good bit. This fight actually kind of surprised me with how game Elisha Ellison was. You look at the stats here. See, these total strikes, I don't really get the numbers here because I remember watching this fight. They were going back and forth a pretty good bit. Maybe a lot of his fights or a lot of his strikes were grazing, so they didn't really count too much. But I remember he was actually landing a good bit on Gable Stevenson. Gable Stevenson was very, very fast for heavyweight, and he had a lot of power. There was some clinch work. There was some a lot of strikes. It was basically kind of a brawling striking match. And Gable Stevenson gets the win. So he extends his streak to 4-0, all first round KOs. I'm not really sure what I think about his performance. Like, he did get the win and he was a massive favorite and he should have got the win. And it was early on. He is fast, he's powerful, but I feel like he was a little bit sloppy. He kind of came in a bit reckless and allowed Ellison to land a good bit of shots. I don't agree with these numbers here because I remember watching the fight thinking to myself that Elisha is actually landing a good bit. Gable Stevenson did allow himself to get hit a bit too much. I think if he is going to fight people further up in the rankings, he needs to be careful and maybe tighten up his boxing game a bit because he kind of came out like a brawler, kind of reckless. I know he does have very high level wrestling that could really back up his fighting game, but yeah, good win. But I think there's a lot of things he needs to polish up. Granted, he's only 4-0, so he's very early in his fight game. He has plenty of time to make a lot of improvements. He's still pretty young. So there's a lot of room for improvement, but regardless, the hype train so far is still rolling. The guy with the massive favorite numbers here gets the win. All right, any of the fights I want to talk about? This fight right here, Tracy Cortez versus Wong. I keep wanting to call it Kong, but every time I hear them pronounce it, they say Tong. This fight was all right. At one point, Wong Tong landed a very blatant illegal knee to Tracy Cortez's face while she was down on the mat. She was on like her knees, and Wong gets she knees her right in the face, and they end up taking a point away from her. And so she ends up winning unanimous decision. It could have been 30-27 because the point taken away is 29-27. So it was kind of bad seeing her do a very blatant foul like that. Beyond that, there's really not much that stuck out in this fight. It was still pretty fun. Even the fights that I skipped over that I haven't really mentioned, they were still fun to watch. Even the ones that ended kind of quick, they were still pretty exciting to see. But I don't really need to take my time to go over every single one of these. This one I'm going to talk about, though. 16 seconds in, Pinas lands a disgusting looking punch, drops Almeida with like just one nasty punch, and he goes in to follow up, and the ref doesn't immediately like jump in. So he's like, all right, and he kind of like swung one more just to kind of secure the deal, so to speak. I have a lot of respect for fighters that show that level of restraint. I don't think it's necessary. A lot of fighters say that, you don't stop until the ref pulls you off. But sometimes I do find it respectful as an honorable martial artist to know that whenever it's time to go ahead and show a little bit of restraint. Pinas showed that restraint after landing a very powerful shot, ends the fight early in the first round. It was a great performance. I wouldn't have been mad if he would have got a performance of the night bonus, but he didn't. Bobby Green and Paddy Pimblett got performance of the night bonuses. Fight of the night bonus was the Royval fight. I might have mentioned that earlier. I would not have been mad if this guy got a performance of the night bonus because it was a really great finish. And like I said, the restraint that he showed I thought was pretty cool. I think this guy is going to be a problem in the middleweight division. If I'm not mistaken, he's unranked. So I think they need to put him against someone ranked and see where he goes from there. This other fight, this is gonna be the last one that I talk about. These two fights were fun to watch, even though this one ended kind of quick. This one ended in the second round. Really good submission on this one. I don't think I need to break those down. This one I'm gonna talk about a little bit. This fight was really fun to watch. So Fareed Basharat was supposed to fight Ethan Ewing, and I said that I wanted Basharat to win so he could stay undefeated because I want to see Ethan Ewing fulfill his destiny of beating undefeated fighters. And Fareed Basharat did get the win. That being said, this fight was not an easy fight for Fareed Basharat. He was a heavy favorite here, but it really felt like it was a fight where he was not that much of a favorite, that the odds would have probably been a lot closer because John Garza was absolutely game in this fight. He really took it to Fareed Basharat. It was a pretty close fight. As you can see by the strikes here, it was pretty close. The takedowns did play a big factor, but there was a lot of stand-up parts in this fight. There was a lot of striking that went back and forth. I can't remember the final judge's scorecards, if he got all 3 rounds or only 2. I don't have them in front of me right now, but let's see if it says here, if I close this. Not, it doesn't say, but this fight was actually really fun. I was going into the main event thinking of that if the, not the main event, sorry, the main card. I was thinking if going into the main card, if there were no like super exciting fights, that this fight was probably going to win the fight of the night bonus, because on the prelims, this was the best fight to watch. Brandon Royval fight ended up being a little bit better, so that one gets the fight of the night, deservedly so. This one was a runner-up. If they wanted to do like 2 fight of the night bonuses, which I think they've done a few times before, this one would have deserved it. This was a very fun fight to watch. I mean, these two landed almost 100 strikes on each other each. They went back and forth a good bit. Fareed Basharat actually had a lot of positive things to say about John Garza after this fight was over. If you want to go back and watch the prelim fights, you should definitely check out this fight. So anyway, that's my overall take on UFC 329. It was a fun time. It was a fun card, all except the main event. Very unfortunate to see it end as quickly as it did with Conor McGregor's injured knee. But outside of that, this card delivered. Now, what's next in UFC? Well, for a few weeks, we're going to have a handful of fight nights. And a lot of these have very good main events here. Like this one is just absolutely fantastic. Dricus du Plessis versus Kamaru Usman. This one's pretty good. Ankalaev versus Khalil Roundtree. Medish versus Rodriguez. That one's okay, I suppose. This one's really good. Gamrot versus Alkild. I expect this fight to be an absolute war. This is going to be our next numbered event, our next pay-per-view, so to speak, UFC 330. This is a fantastic main event. Islam Makhachev versus Ian Machado Gary. The rest of the card, from what I've seen, doesn't excite me too much. You have another title fight in the co-main, which is all right. The rest of these don't really stick out to me a whole lot, but this main event I think is going to be absolutely fantastic. So that's basically it for this episode. Be sure to tune in next week when I'll be talking about this event right here. I'll be giving my predictions on that. It's going to be great. So thanks for tuning in to Vince by Submission. I'll see you all next time.